Are you serious? Are you serious, guys? The Riviera of the Middle East. Is this a prophecy alert? Well, I'll tell you in just a moment, but first let's put a quick shout out for thehealthyfat.com/Paul. Thehealthyfat.com/Paul. It turns out the key to losing weight and keeping it off is not in carbs or fat or even probiotic-rich foods. No, the end game of having a healthy weight as well as more energy and a long, healthy life comes down to a specific switch. You can flip it in your body to flush out those unnecessary calories. Dr. Stephen Gundry calls this the caloric bypass. And by activating this specific process in your body, he has seen thousands, yes, thousands of people dramatically improve their health, even at age 50 and beyond. This includes weight loss, getting tons of more energy, returning to the good health they had in their youth once they simply address this one key thing to better health. Not only that, but this is actually associated with the improved digestion, strong feeling joints and muscles, smoother skin, and healthier lives. Guys, seriously, Dr. Stephen Gundry lost 70 pounds himself during his research and has kept the weight off for 20 years. I'm just telling you right now, he has a video to watch. 20 million people have. Click on the link below this video. Just go watch the video. It's thehealthyfat.com/Paul. Thehealthyfat.com/Paul. You'll be glad that you did. All right. Well, okay. So last night, there's a ton of stuff going on, right? The FBI agents, 5,000 of them that worked on Jan 6, all their files are being reviewed now. What all did they do? Doge has found unbelievable wasteful spending. Washington's flipping out. And, of course, President Trump took the time to talk to these, of course, with Benjamin Netanyahu, and then address that meeting with the prime minister and the press. And now we have reaction on Trump saying that the United States could take over the Gaza Strip, relocate all the Palestinians, half of them in Egypt, half of them in Jordan, rebuild temporary housing for them, make that real nice and peaceful, while the entire Gaza Strip is leveled and rebuilt and turned into the Riviera of the Middle East. Shocking revelation. Netanyahu is standing right there. And we also have reaction from the world over this proclamation that President Donald Trump made. And I'm going to read the reaction, the initial reaction of part of the world in Europe and in the Middle East and in Asia. But first, let's read a prophecy, because what Trump said was he wanted to restructure the Middle East. Yes, he says that, and bring peace to the Middle East and bring normalization, especially with Saudi Arabia and Israel and other neighbors. But the removing of all the Palestinians from Gaza, what a wild, at first when you heard it, it's like that's almost impossible. But it really isn't. When they have nowhere else, the homes are all destroyed anyway, and there's no running water, and there's no electricity, and there's no infrastructure. There's a gazillion tunnels underneath that really need to be filled in. But then I went to the Bible. If you go to the book of Zephaniah, chapter 2, it's talking about these 5 Philistine cities. And of course, the Palestinians, they came up with their name from the root word of Philistina, or the Philistines. And actually, they're not Philistines. These people who live in Gaza, these folks are actually Arabs. And they belong in Jordan and in Egypt primarily. And they're Arabs, is what they are. And there is no such thing as a Palestinian people, but they did take that name on to try to identify themselves. Here's what it says in the book of Zephaniah. the Lord says, gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O nation, not desired. Before the decree bring forth, before the day pass as the chaff, before the fierce anger of the Lord comes upon you, before the day of the Lord's anger comes upon you, seek ye the Lord, all ye meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment. Seek righteousness, seek meekness. It may be ye shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. For Gaza shall be forsaken, and Ashkelon a desolation. And they shall drive out Ashdod at the noonday, and Ekron shall be rooted up. Now, this is very significant because we do have information on these Philistine cities. Then the Philistines, of course, were also a tribe with giants in it, which arrived, of course, from the Nephilim. Now, if you take a look at this from a historical standpoint, has this happened is the first question. Has this prophecy come to pass? The answer is yes and no. First of all, the city of Ashkelon was a Philistine city, and it was completely, they were completely driven out. The Philistines were completely driven out of Ashkelon, and it's now primarily Jewish settlements, Jewish people who live there. And there is others from other countries that live there, but it's the majority are Jews. Ashdod, that also was completely made desolate, and all the Philistines were driven out of there, and that is also a Jewish city. Ekron was also a Philistine city and was completely demolished, but it never did rebuild. Nobody lives there. It's just rubble. And the last one is Gaza. Gaza has never been completely eradicated. And so Gaza is the only one of these 4 cities found in Zephaniah 2, and there's actually 5 cities. There's another one as well, but of these, the only one that hasn't been, where the occupants have been removed and the Jews moved back in, is Gaza. And this prophecy says, for Gaza shall be forsaken. And when you think about it, what has just took place now, and this would have never happened if Hamas doesn't control Gaza, and this would have never happened if Hamas doesn't come over and kill 1,200 Jews and take 250 people hostage. This would have never happened. What has happened? Now Gaza is completely demolished, and about 1.5 to 1.8 million Palestinians have really nowhere to live, and there's no infrastructure, and there's no way to even make that happen without complete renovation of the entire area. So in other words, the prophecy of Zephaniah 2, if the Palestinians are moved out of Gaza and then it's rebuilt, it does fulfill Zephaniah chapter 2. Again, Ashkelon, the Philistines were completely driven out, and it was rebuilt, and it's a Jewish city. Ashdod, the Philistines were completely driven out, and it was rebuilt as a Jewish city. And Ekron, the Philistines were completely driven out, and nobody has ever returned. But Gaza, this hasn't never happened. So really what President Trump said, and I doubt he knows this, what he said was actually a fulfillment. If that happens, if they actually move the Palestinians out and rebuild that area, it's actually a fulfillment of Bible prophecy, Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 4. Now, the world isn't liking what he said, I can tell you. And I was just looking at the some of the reports that just came over the wire, some of the reactions. President Donald Trump's plan for the U.S. to take over the war-torn Gaza and create the Riviera of the Middle East after resettling the Palestinians elsewhere has shattered original U.S. policy on Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The shock move that Trump made was swiftly condemned by some international nations like Saudi Arabia. Matter of fact, countries like Russia, China, Germany, and Spain, Ireland, and the United Kingdom all said that they disagreed with this decision, and they all support a two-state solution that was formed. This would form the basis of Washington's policy in the region for decades, which has held that Gaza would be part of a future Palestinian state that includes the West Bank or Judea. But Trump, in his first major Middle East policy announcement, says he envisioned building a resort, a Riviera, on the Mediterranean, where international communities could come and live in harmony, including Palestinians, by completely leveling and rebuilding the entire coastal enclave. International communities with people from all over the world, including Palestinians, could live in harmony in the new Gaza Strip, the Riviera of the Middle East. President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has described Gaza as very valuable waterfront property. As a matter of fact, welcoming Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the White House yesterday, President Trump said he would support an effort to permanently resettle the Palestinians, if that was necessary, from Gaza to places where they could live without fear of violence. And he and his team have been discussing this possibility with Jordan and with Egypt and other regional countries. So when you hear the first reaction by some of the Arab nations that no, we'll never do that. Well, that's their public reaction. That's not the private reaction. The private reaction has already been in major discussions. Jared Kushner has made numerous trips to meet with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. They have discussed this very, very real possibility. And even Saudi Arabia said that they would be willing to help build up the Gaza. Of course, it was before saying remove all the people. It was even before actually this war took place, but they really thought about that would be a good idea. But even since the war began, Trump has already been on the phone. He's already been talking to the King of Jordan and the President of Egypt and the Saudi Arabians and other Arab nations. So this isn't shocking to them. They already have had this conversation. But in the news conference, Trump said that Jordan's King Abdullah and Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi would come around to this ideal despite their initial rejections, and saying that they will open their hearts and give us the kind of land that we need to get this done, and people can live in harmony and in peace. Now, the casual proposal sent diplomatic shockwaves across some people around the globe, with China being very forceful in their opposition. China saying we've always believed in a two-state solution. France was probably one of the most critical, as Emmanuel Macron's government said that displacement of Gazans would be a serious violation of international law, an attack on legitimate aspirations of Palestinians, and would destabilize the region. Let me just clarify for Emmanuel Macron. The region's already destabilized. That happened with Obama and the Arab Spring in 2011, when Tunisia and Egypt and Yemen and Libya, all of their leaders were removed and chaos began, and ISIS was formed, and the butchering took place through Iraq and Syria, and Assad teamed up with Russia. I mean, the whole Middle East is absolutely already destabilized. Trump's plan would actually stabilize, because it would say the answer is very simple. We're going to make this a better place to live. We're going to let people live there in peace and harmony. we're gonna build a place for the people from Gaza to go live temporarily, and then build more permanent homes. Some of them will be allowed to go back to Gaza, along with citizens from all over the world. So he's actually trying to create a stabilized region, because right now the region is far from stable. If you think it's stable, when Hamas comes over the fence and kills 1,200 Jews innocently, takes 250 people hostage, and then all of a sudden 21,000 rockets in a 1-year period are fired at Israel, most of them from Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. And then rockets start flying out of Yemen, and rockets start coming out of Syria. And even a few killer drones came out of Iraq, and even 500 rockets fired by Iran. If that's stable, I would hate to see a destabilized world. So I think we needed to clarify that for Emmanuel Macron. It's already destabilized. And this isn't shock. I'm going to say this again. What Trump said last night is really not shocking to the Arab nations. They've already been talking to Trump about this very thing. They're just not ready to say yes, because they want to know what's in it for them. What kind of money can they make? What is their advantage? Because they've been asked for 75 years, they've been asked to take the Palestinian people, and not one of them were willing to do it. They don't want them. Jordan don't want them, and Egypt don't want them. But Trump is saying, look, these are your people. These are your people. And it's time for you to take them, at least temporarily. Now, it's going to take, according to the United Nations estimates that it will take 21 years to rebuild Gaza. Even if you moved all the Palestinians out and restarted all over, it would take 21 years to rebuild it. The United States says it would take 12 to 15 years. So obviously this would be a massive undertaking. But if not, what is the alternative? Leave 2 million, 1.8 million people just living in rubble? I mean, really, what is the plan? What's the alternative? So this is still very early in the game, guys. It ain't over, because Trump already knows that he's made headway with several of these Arab nations. It just, who's going to pay for it, and how do we do it? And everybody wants to know how they're going to make money off of it. And that's bottom line. And if you look at it in the Bible, I just told you, the cities mentioned in the verse of Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 4, they've all, remember what Benjamin Netanyahu said when he said he was coming to Washington? What did he say he was going to do? He said, I'm coming to meet with President Trump. We're going to redraw the Middle East. And people, I don't think, really was listening to BB when he said that, but that's exactly what he meant. They want to redraw it. Now, while that's going on, yeah, you're right. BB's right. And part of that plan is to build a canal. He's exactly right, which would create more economic advantage in the Middle East. Also, another one would be pipelines of water. There could be water. Israel could help Saudi Arabia with water piping and desalination systems. And at the same time, Saudi Arabia could build pipelines that could pump oil into Israel, because Israel has to pay a ton of money for the oil they have. And this would cheapen, everybody would benefit there. So there's a lot of economic reasons for this to take place, as well as putting an end to this conflict by saying there's going to be a two-state solution. Now, it's never going to end the conflict till Jesus comes back, and there's no doubt about that. And the Antichrist will play right into all of this ultimately, when after the third temple's built, the Antichrist will come in and hijack that temple and try to hijack the whole world and even kill the two witnesses who are preaching in the streets. I mean, there's some things that's going to happen that is already prophesied. But right now, what Trump is doing is making sure the land is not divided. Let me say this again. A lot of people didn't understand him. He said, I'll take control of it. He's not saying he'd take possession. He said, I'll take control of it, rebuild it. But you know who he's leaving it for Israel. Israel will be right there step by step in the rebuilding process, along with the Saudi Arabians and maybe some of the Jordanians and the Egyptians. Everybody's going to get a lot of contracts to rebuild this entire Gaza Strip. And then, so Trump wants to use the power of America's diplomacy and the economic opportunity. But he's not coming to take the Gaza and make that part of America and divide the land. Quite the contrary. The exact opposite. He's putting an end to the two-state solution. He's putting an end to the discussion of a two-state solution and wants to rebuild Gaza. But he hands it to Israel. Israel's the one that's going to keep the land. Ultimately, it will be, and it still is Israel's land. And so that is why, so a lot of our YouTube prophets are misunderstanding people. I call them YouTube prophets, but there's people out there who just make crazy stuff up and they go on Twitter and they go nuts and they didn't even listen and they don't know the story and they don't listen and they don't know the Bible. This two-state solution ideal just died. It's not going to happen. Gaza is going to be rebuilt, and not to give it back to the Palestinian people to destroy it again, but it will be given over to the Israelis to run it, and the other people from around the world will be able to come there and enjoy what Trump envisions as the Riviera of the Middle East. And all these surrounding countries will make billions of dollars in contracts. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain. I mean, every one of them, and the Israelis, all of them are going to make a ton of money, and the Americans are going to make a ton of money rebuilding this area. And it will fulfill prophecy because it's the only city of the 5 cities that were once possessed by the Philistines that has not been completely eradicated, and then the Jews living there. It has already happened in, as I said, Ashkelon and Ashdod. The Philistines were removed from those areas, and Jews now live there in new cities. And Ekron, the Philistines were removed from there, but no one moved back. That just was left desolate. And Gaza has never had everybody removed and rebuilt, and the Jews there. So that's and it says it right here in Zephaniah 2 that that's what's going to happen. So we're waiting on that prophecy to happen. So actually, Trump, I don't know if he even knows, but what he was saying was actually a plan that would fulfill that prophecy. And no doubt, it also puts an end to the two-state solution, puts an end to it. And it makes Israel have full possession of the land. We'll see how this all plays out. It could go in a lot of different directions, but certainly I think you got to look at this and ask yourself, is this a prophecy alert? And BP brought out a good point about the canal. And there's another thing that is part of the plan. I didn't bring it up, and that is an airport. They want to build an airport right there where Gaza and Egypt is, and people will be able to fly in instead of go to Tel Aviv and then driving down to Gaza. You could just fly right on in and land right there on the border of Egypt and Gaza and go on in to that area. And so that would make it opens it up for the whole world then in a lot more easier I'm talking about the whole Arab world, because the Arabs really don't want to fly in and out of Tel Aviv. And this way, the Arab world from all over the world, all the Arab nations from all over the world would all feel comfortable flying in to the airport that's on the border of Egypt and Gaza. And let me tell you another story about this. I don't know if you guys remember, but 9 years ago, I've interviewed a guy 2 or 3 times named Samatov. And I interviewed him. I put him on television, put him on YouTube. You can find it. It's on my YouTube channel. And Samatov is a Canadian Jew who lives in Israel because his parents were Holocaust survivors. And one of his closest friends was a secretary to Ariel Sharon. And when Ariel Sharon was the prime minister, Ariel Sharon was involved in a high-level meeting that took place in the early 2000s. I want to say 2001, but it could have been 2000. I'm not sure. And at the meeting was the United States, the European Union, the United Nations, the Russians, the Vatican, Saudi Arabia, the king, one of the Saudi Arabian representatives, and the Israelis. And the 7 entities came together and drew up a plan for peace in the Middle East. And it included an airport on the border of Egypt and Gaza. It included rebuilding Gaza to make it a more modern city for all people of the world to come and feel comfortable and safe. It was signed off on by those 7. Let me read them say them to you again. The European Union, the United Nations, the United States, the Russians, the Saudi Arabians, the Vatican, and the Israelis all signed the document. And so I remember interviewing Samatov because he said, look, Ariel Sharon had a stroke, laid in a coma for 8 years. And so that lady who was his secretary, she did share that information with Samatov. And then he shared it with me in an interview. He had told other people this too, but I interviewed him and he broke it all out for me just like that. And I said to him, I just don't see how in the world that's going to happen. Folks, now I see how that's going to happen. And that was an agreement, a secret agreement that was signed. So the plan we're watching right now, folks, has really been in play a long time. I mean, a long time. Ancient. Zephaniah said it. It was Nebuchadnezzar who destroyed Ekron in 604 BC, and Ekron never was rebuilt. But Ashdod and Ashkelon were rebuilt, and Israelis live there now.
Saturday was silent, and surely it was through. Since when has impossible ever stopped you?
You're right, VP. He was smiling. There's no doubt about it.
Is Sunday's empty too?
He was in full agreement.
Since when has impossible ever stopped you?
That's right, Zilran. That's what it says. The seacoast shall be dwelling in cottages.
This is the sound of a dry bones rattling.
In other words, it will be a beautiful place.
This is the praise, make a dead man walk again.
And that hasn't happened yet, so here we go.
Open the grave, I'm coming out. I'm gonna live again. This is the sound of dry bones rattling. Pentecostal fire, stirring something new. You're not gonna run out of miracles anytime soon. Your resurrection power, it runs in my veins too. I believe there's another miracle here in this room.
And this is
the sound of dry bones rattling.
and what we're witnessing is going to bring people to Jesus Christ.
This is the praise, make a dead man walk again.
Are you serious?
Open the grave, I'm coming out. I'm gonna live again. This is the sound of dry bones rattling.
You're right. Gaza was an average, decent city before 2005, and Hamas took over in 2006.
My God is able to save and deliver and heal and restore
and by the way, the CIA just offered everybody in the CIA a buyout of their employment.
Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, thus saith the Lord God, behold, my people, I will open your graves and cause you to come up from your graves and bring you into the land of Israel. Then you shall know that I am the Lord, and I will put my spirit in you, and I will place you in your own land, and you shall live. I will place you in your own land. You shall live, 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 live.
So Trump is revamping the CIA, and he's revamping the FBI. Yeah, it's quite interesting what Trump is doing, actually, and that is he's revamping the FBI. It looks like about 5,000. There's 13,000 FBI agents. It looks like about 5,000 of them he's going to let go because they were involved in the heavy-handed negotiation of the January 6th people. And the CIA looks like he's just going to lay everybody off that wants to leave. If you don't really want to be a part of the Trump team, you should take the 8-month severance and leave. So that's being offered right now, today. And so that's two agencies. The USAID, that's going to be that's already being dismantled, shut down. And yeah. Oh, the writer of the song, that song is called Rattle. And the writer is a man named Brandon Lake, who is really a very I think he's one, he's a very well-known Christian artist. He's won a couple Grammys. And then, but it was Brandon Lake, Christopher Brown, and Stephen Furtick, who is a pastor. So those three are the ones that wrote Rattle. And in my version of Rattle, we changed the prophecy of what Stephen Furtick prophesies. And he prophesies the dry bones come alive. He uses a prophecy that it's about Jesus Christ coming out of the grave, which you can use that because it's certainly resurrection. But in my version, we use the prophecy out of Ezekiel 37, which is that the dry bones represents Israel, comes back, and the land is created. But it also, we have in the song, of course, the stone rolls away, and and the man comes out in the garden, the stone rolls away. So it's about the resurrection as well. So we changed the prophecy part of it. And what's really wild about that, Israel Hall suggested that we change the prophecy. He said, let's make it a little different. Let's do our own version, use different instruments, but change the prophecy so that it's not exactly like they do it. And anyway, the prophecy is actually in Ezekiel 37. So we did it, but when we did it, I did that on one take. And what's really wild about that, and anybody who's ever recorded any music knows that usually it's 7, 8, 10 takes of the same song, and then they put together the best phrases or words of all 10 times you do it, and then it comes up with the one that sounds the best, which is pieces and parts of all 10. But on this prophecy I did on this song Rattle, that is a one take with no notes. it just came out of me in the studio. I was in Nashville, and it just flowed out of me. It really was a prophecy. And after it happened, everybody there said, stop! Don't even try to do that again. We're going with this version. We're going with this version because, and it's so that makes it kind of our version of the song. But believe me, Brandon Lake is a tremendous writer, and Stephen Furtick's a really good preacher, and these guys did a phenomenal job putting this song together. I mean, a great song. But our version, Israel Hall really orchestrated it using different instruments like violins and cellos and rattles and drums and guitars and bass guitars and just I think he's even got his sax in there. I'm pretty sure he created this incredible masterpiece to make this song what it is. It was for me. I just sat back and watched these tremendous musicians. Two of them are in the band Alabama. One is in the band with Brooks and Dunn, and another guy was with Eastern Corbin, I think is what they're called. And then of course Joseph Shackelford was in that. Israel Hall was in that. Renee Ture was in that, and then there's Jeffrey Clarecoper and his wife Kelsey are also singing harmony in that. So there was a ton of people, and Israel Hall, of course, also singing most of the lead in that. So it was really an incredible collaboration. And on that album, that is the one song that is just an absolute collaboration for sure. Pretty neat. It was pretty good, and I think it was a pretty good version. And guess what? That version that we just played has been played over 4 million times online. So, yeah, it's done pretty well, and that's just our version. But Brandon Lake's version's been played probably, I don't even want to know. I'm going to say 40 million times, okay? Maybe more. Who knows? But it's a phenomenal song. All right, guys, I'm going to let you go. We'll be back with more. Stay right here on the Coming Apocalypse, and I will be co-hosting tonight Getting Ready show with Israel Hall. We'll be co-hosting together tonight as Pastor Melvin is out of town. He is in Costa Rica on a mission trip. So I'll be co-hosting with Israel Hall tonight. Starts at 7 p.m., of course, at ffctv.church. I'll be back with more on the Coming. And guys, who knows what Trump's going to do before this day's over. That's how fast. These 17 days, I can't believe what all has happened in just 17 days. He's done more in 17 days than the rest of the presidents before him in 17 years.